Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio. We like to talk about relationships, and sometimes that means divorce, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have renowned author Dawn Dais joining us. She's talking about the fifth installment in her book series, which is can I say shit on our own show, Dawn?
I don't know. Are you going to beep yourself out?
Okay, the SHIT, no one tells you about divorce. Okay, so come on, we say the naughty words here. This stuff no one tells you about divorce, but her series is the stuff no one tells you about, whether it's pregnancy, toddlers. Pregnancy is a big one, and just in general, the things people don't tell you in life, and then all of a sudden you find out and you're going, what? I think that's a really cool series. So everyone can go to your website, Dawn Dais, D-A-I-S is the last name. And of course, Amazon, you're all over. Amazon is a bestseller as well. So welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Hey, this is great because divorce is messy. Any kind of breakup is messy. And I think you deal with it right up front immediately in your book, talking about it is a process of grief. But dealing with someone's passing that's a kind of a natural occurrence. Divorce is very difficult because it goes into the did I do this right or wrong kind of blame game too, right? That kind of makes it harder.
Yeah. And there's different, there's divorce with and without kids. And I think those are two entirely different experiences. I had kids, and I think that divorce of any type is difficult, but when you have children and you basically have to collaborate with this person on the most important project in the world for the rest of your days, like it's a big ask. And especially at the beginning of the end, when everything's very heightened and raw, and you guys are kind of both trying to heal from each other, and you're trying to heal from that person that is constantly in your face because you're having to co-parent with them. So there's definitely a grief process. My first therapist that I talked to really was leaning into that, equating it to grief and the different stages of grief that you're going to go through. For me, the grief, I think, was more the losing my kids 50% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I had kind of grieved my relationship years prior because it had been one of those, it was sort of dying on the vine for a long time. And we stayed together because we had kids and we had a whole huge life. And, we stayed together and we shouldn't have. But there was definitely a grief that occurred for the ending of the relationship much sooner than the relationship was officially like divorce signed. But my grief for, I don't even know if I'm completely over it yet, is that I lost 50% of my time with my kids. I don't know that I knew I was expecting it, but it hit me really, really hard to not be with them every single day. They were, I think, 6 and 8 when we split. So they weren't babies. That's good. But it was just hard. It's hard not taking them in every night and being with them every morning and being with them every time they're sick and that kind of stuff. So that was kind of what I had to deal with, like, as far as grief.
You said it was at 7 stages of grief, right? Or for divorce, is it 7?
Yeah, it was 7 stages of. I think it was with the 5 stages of grief, and I changed it to the 7 stages of divorce. And
7 stages of divorce. And your journaling part, I kind of, that's so funny. I just had an interview with a psychologist, Jodi Eckleberry Hunt, and she wrote about badass stories, and we were talking about stuff. And I said, well, I don't think we said this on air, but journaling is exactly how you write it out. And everybody, a little bit of profanity goes a long way.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, so I was just telling her after, I was like, my journaling is this. And then I'm like, okay, I'm done now.
Yeah.
I have nothing more to say.
I was talking to a bunch of different divorce people before I started writing to kind of try to find a through line in all of our experiences. And there is a through line. There's something about talking to someone that's been through divorce, no matter the circumstances. But so we've talked for hours and hours and hours. And I was like, I'm just trying to get my head in the right space before I write this book. Because we were only like a year and a half out from divorce when I was writing it. And I knew, like, I just didn't really want to write like a temper tantrum that was going to be in permanent ink. That's not cute. So I was trying to get my head straight, but I said, I want to make sure I'm in the right headspace. So I don't write an entire book with every chapter titled F you, you effing F. And they were like, oh, but I would read that book. And so I was like, well, maybe I can incorporate that. And so I have like 4 or 5 chapters that are like rage journal sections. And I think that's important too, you know, like because you can't just carry around this anger. And definitely you have to, like, I have a rage journal chapter that's like, just put your story down on paper. And you don't need to share it with your ex. You don't need to like put it on social media. You don't need to blow it up and put it on your wall, but like rage it out onto paper. And eventually you just have to leave it behind you, because it's not doing you any good to carry it around.
Have you done the burning?
Yes,
yeah, burn it. Yeah, the burning ceremonies are great.
Yes, it's like you have to. I mean, there's lessons to be learned from everything. So like, take the lessons, leave the wreckage, and like keep moving. You can't carry that anger with you all the time. It's just, what is that? Like, you take the poison and expect the other person to die, sort of thing. Like you're just, the anger is not doing you any favors, and it's not hurting the other person, you know, it's just hurting you. So yeah, that's the rage journals. Get it all out, rage it out.
And you talk about social media, and this is something really, especially, you know, you have kids, right? So here you are as a couple, and then you talk about the importance. So you want the divorce announcement, which I think it's funny, because I have a friend who went through a breakup. I don't think they were quite married, but it's Commonwealth kind of thing, you know what I mean? And everybody kept going to her, well, you know, her daughter's dad, and she's like, excuse me, everybody, we have not been together for 2 freaking years. If you want to know how he is, go ask him. I don't care. I mean, I see him, but this is not, I don't want to know. I don't care. We're done. It's over. Like, would you stop coming to me to talk to him? You know, so it's and yet they do have their unity with their kids together, you know, but that whole kind of like, it's just stop it. And then also, not, I've had a friend who, and their ex, where he just started off on her on social media in front of people. So the social media and the announcement, I think that has to happen in a way, like something has to happen.
Well, it's always fun, because like social media, which is like Facebook, you are friends, quote unquote, with a lot of people that you're really not friends with. You sort of like know them, or you knew them at some point. You went to high school with them. You're like, it's not somebody that you're like texting or calling on a regular basis. It's always fun when somebody's going through a breakup, and you're like, you can see the breadcrumbs of their hints that they're going through a breakup, and you're just like, hold on. And then you start kind of looking back and like this investigative sort of thing. With me, I did like a photo shoot with my kids for the fall or something, and I did a bunch of photos with them, and then with them and me, and then for my holiday card I sent it out, and it was just the 3 of us, and that was sort of like my announcement. My friends and my family that were close to me knew, but like, I just don't have time to like tell every person in the world. And I didn't do
and
like
then
a social media post.
Who do you tell? Like, you have to make a list.
Like, you have to go through. And so, and then I said, one good way to do it is tell you, like, your one friend that cannot keep a secret, and tell them, and then say, please don't tell anyone, and then just let them do the work. Like, you want people to know, so that you're not having these weird conversations at like the kids' games where people still think that you guys are together, or like, you know, a family event where your uncle Bob's like, how's it? And you're like, well, we've been divorced for 3 years. You know, like, you don't really want to go around putting a billboard up, but then at the same time, like, just, there's got to be different ways to let people know.
And then also, with you having been married to a woman, what is that like now, when it was so hard to get marriage to be legal? You know, gay marriage is I mean, it wasn't too long ago, a friend of mine finally got married, and, you know, his partner, they were together for almost 40 years. And after 40 years, they finally get married. So one of them had cancer. Within 6 months, he passed away. And the other one couldn't get the Social Security money because you weren't married long enough. They just now legally, I mean, we had a president that didn't let things happen. Anyway, so it took time. And finally he won, and a whole bunch of others. It was like a big lawsuit thing that went up to the Supreme Court and everything. And they finally won that, saying, hey, if you were married at this kind of time, you know, the equal rights are equal rights, you know. So it's got to be kind of an interesting thing now, where there was this big fight for this, and then people look at it like, you should not get divorced. Like, was there any of that kind of feedback, when you went through this?
No, not really, but I remember when gay marriage was legalized, I was like, this is really good news for wedding planners and divorce attorneys. Cause like, it's just math, right? Like people that get married, 50% probably going to get divorced. So it's kind of inevitable that there's going to be divorce in that community. I do think that sometimes there's a little added pressure on us because there was such a huge fight for it. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of feel like you're letting down the entire community by divorcing. I know that like celebrity people that are in, gay marriages, they get divorced and they feel a bigger pressure on them because they're sort of representing the whole community. Yeah. And then I think, there's some people that were not accepted, their sexuality wasn't accepted, and they kind of saw their marriage as a validation of their sexuality to maybe to family members who didn't accept them, and they were able to say, oh, look, I have a marriage, I have kids, I'm doing everything, look at I'm equal, and kind of using that as trying to get acceptance for them and who they are, and maybe feeling like, oh, if I get a divorce, I failed not only in my relationship, but is now my sexuality going to be in question and belittled or whatever. I didn't really have that experience because I just don't have anyone in my life that is like that. I have a really supportive group of friends and family, but cool. I know that it is the case for some people in the gay community. And, there's also the part of it that, I had our kids, so they're biologically mine, and my ex is on their birth certificate, but I know people who are in her position who have had their parenting rights questioned because the kids aren't biologically theirs. So you have to go through like this second parent adoption thing. And it's like, I told her when I found out about that, because one of my friends was going through it, and I told my ex, I'm like, you need to get a second parent adoption. And she's like, why? You're the one that would take them. And I'm like, I don't know, it feels uncomfortable that like there's someplace somewhere that you could lose your kids. And so that's a part of something, like I know in the back of her head, she always has that thought that if I were to go nuts, I could probably do something to keep her from her children. Like a go to Florida or whatever. And it's a horrible feeling to have when you're going through that process. And that process is hard enough without thinking, oh, is this going to throw my parenting rights into chaos or something, into question? And that's a horrible thing to be carrying around in the back of your head. In our case, again, it wasn't something that came up because it's just not my style. That's their parent. But I know people who've had to fight. And and there's always the fear that what happens if the Supreme Court turns it over and doesn't allow gay marriage and doesn't make everything fall apart as far as parenting and stuff. So it's just a different way of having to kind of
we're still in touchy water right now.
Yeah.
Really, when you think of it, for women, especially just in general in this country, we're kind of under attack, not kind of, we are about what's going on with our bodies. And, and talking about the parenting side, that's also really difficult. It's so funny because, I come from a, divorced family, and it was like, get the kid away, because my whatever person that helped make me is not necessarily a nice person. And so it was, you do want to get your kid away from someone like that. But at the same time, there's people that, how do we work together for the best thing of the kid? But for my mom in those days, it was like, normally the woman gets the kids, that kind of thing. And the dad gets them on holidays. Meantime, the woman's been doing all the hard work. So we've changed a lot, thinking about, okay, two women and the parenting, to share custody has got to be kind of like, you talk about that in your book about, now it's like, okay, we didn't work out together, but now we have to do one of the most important things in the world, is raise these kids, these humans, and somehow make it good for them and not bring our stuff into their world. So it's like a whole other skill set.
Yeah, one of my friends told me the other day that she watched her brother get divorced, and she's like, he works harder now on his relationship with his ex than he did when they were married, because you really, it's a level of maturity and compromise that it's very difficult at the beginning when everything is heightened and you're still kind of in this agitated state. I always liken it to the fact that like we were at a partnership table, and I think I abandoned the partnership table well before we were done. I just was done. And I sort of saw divorce as like an end point. And it's not. It's divorce is just the beginning of the next thing. And I just wanted to be away from this person. And then you realize, oh, no, not only do I not get to be away from them, I have to, it's not even like this casual acquaintance I have. No, I have to speak to them almost every day, and we have to collaborate to raise humans together. Like it's not this like casual little relationship we have.
I am never dating again.
Well, I mean, if you don't have kids, it's just a different thing. Yeah. And so like we had to come back to this table and relearn how to communicate with each other, and like relearn grace for each other, and we have a safe word now for when we start to escalate our fights, like we're starting to get agitated with each other. We have a safe word that we like text or say, and then we're done, like put it to the side and like take some time and just breathe, because like we don't want it, because we're both good people and we both love our children more than anything. So that's great, because not everybody has that situation. A lot of people are co-parenting with people that are not coming back to the table and making the effort. So we're lucky in that regard. But the fact is, we're two people that couldn't work together, and we have to work together. So
and you were attracted to each other for something, you know what I mean? So there was that, like you said, that good part of it. A friend of ours, she got divorced, and with her kids, the co-parenting, she wanted that co-parenting. You know, they were a little bit older, but still, she just thought it was important, and he was all into it. And so they had to sit with a mediator and create a plan. And they both agreed, we have to look at our kids as a business, not making money, but as this other thing. We are no longer, we don't like each other, but we have to respect each other because we're both good at what we do. And so they looked at their kids as like this company that they have to run.
Yeah. A lot of people do that. And I think it helps them disconnect in a way from the emotion of having to do with that person. To me, that was always a really difficult thing to do, because it's not business. Like, these are my kids. This is the most important.
Right. You're still emotional.
The therapist would constantly say that it's a business, it's a business, it's a business. And a lot of people I know do that. And then other people are kind of like me, where they're like, this is not a business. Like, this is anything but business. This is the most personal thing we will ever do in this life, is create human beings from scratch and turn them into great people and love them, and love them in a way that makes them know that they are number one, and we're putting our BS to the side. And, so we I think at the beginning that helps, because there's so much emotion. And so you do have to find ways to put that aside and just focus on the project. A few years out now, we I think we're just able to have conversations, and
that's good.
We're far enough removed from sort of the explosion of things and I kept saying that. I said, we have to start from today. We can't keep bringing the past into every conversation we have, because guess what? It didn't work. So it's over, done. And it's not going to work if every conversation we have for the next 10 years somehow brings in our past stuff. Like, we have to start from today and just clean the slate. And so we started from today a lot, like several days. We started from today. And eventually I think you get far enough away from that it's too much effort to reach back and be like, oh, remember this time you did it. It's like, oh, geez, just keep it moving. Like,
what, again, you're saying it again. We know that story. It's a repeat,
Yeah.
But there's a growth to what you both are doing. There's a growth, personal growth through doing this together, right? And then at the same time for your kids, I mean, and then you write a book about it. So how does that go? Well, in regards to writing the book, it's like, that's wow.
Yeah, that was a huge
You're supposed
consideration.
to wait until you're a granny to do that.
This is like, I don't know, I think 8th, 9th something book, and a lot of my books have done well enough to be sticking around for years and years and years, and so I've had the opportunity to read them 10 years out And they're all kind of like these time capsules of certain times in my life. Like I did one when I trained for a marathon, and it's a time capsule of that experience. I did one when my babies were little. That's a time capsule. And I'm aware enough to know that I'm writing this right now, but it's going to come out in a year, and I'm going to be in a completely different place in a year. And then it's going to be on shelves for years and years and years. And my kids are going to read it someday. And so I was really conscious of that when writing. And my editors were very conscious of that. So we did a lot of cutting. I've never edited as much any book, because you're doing this balance of trying to be real and raw, but then also like I'm talking about other people and other people's lives. And there's a certain amount that I feel comfortable sharing. And there's a lot, like, it's just not mine to share. You know, there's a lot of the story that's not in there because it is an invasion of my ex's privacy. So like you have to kind of walk this line and try to keep the theme sort of universal to whatever your experience is. You're gonna have these certain kind of, you know, phases you go through. So yeah, like I said, it's permanent ink, and you're writing about other people, and not other people that you're just never going to see again. Like these are the people I have to do life with, and it's important that I take that into consideration. So I hope I did okay. You know, I know that I was cutting up until the last second and trying to soften stuff and take as much responsibility for my own part and stuff as I could, because it's never just one person's fault, ever. So,
you know, I always wonder, like, you've got the kids thing, but then to do divorce when people do have a business together, like that's ooh, eek.
There are some people that keep doing business, and I'm like, oh, and then there's a lot of people that do what we did, which is we kind of knew we were done, but we just had all these kind of financial entanglements that it was a lot to get out of. And we stayed living together for 2 years, 3 years.
Wow.
Just to kind of get the financial stuff settled so that we could go our separate ways and not have to blow up all the stuff that we had built. And we also, both of us just didn't want to leave the babies. And so there are some people that do that where they're just cohabitating, and that is like a ring of hell, because it's this purgatory. This is sort of this like holding pattern on life, because you're not in this relationship really, but you're with this person you don't want to be with, and you're cohabitating with someone that you really don't want to be with. So it's like you're stuck there. It's like a bad reality show.
It's weird, because at the same time you could you could go backwards.
Yeah, and I think people
you could slip back into that. I mean, I've been that with relationships, like we're done, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, we shouldn't have had that glass of wine together.
Exactly. And I was always the one that was very like, no, because I mean, you have every reason to stay together. You have, I mean, for us, there was no abuse. There was no, you know, cheating. There was nothing. It was just two people that just weren't supposed to be together. I was thinking about that the other day. Like a lot of relationships is like picking a person and doing the thing. And, you know, if people change, people evolve. And so even the person you think you love at this age is, I mean, we all are constantly changing. So you pick that person, and that's the person you're going to do it with, and hopefully it works. But there's something to be said for acknowledging at some point, like this was just not the right person. And I think, you know, our parents' generation was big on, that's the person, put your head down, keep going. That's it. That's your person.
You could have an arranged marriage. That would be.
And those work out just as much as the ones. It's like crazy how well those work out.
We've done interviews on it, and sometimes the stats, depending on where, are actually higher. But then I go, okay, well, are you in a country where women have no rights? You know?
Yeah, one of my friend's parents was an arranged marriage, and but then I think if I had my friends and family picking someone for me, they might actually do a better job than I would.
That's the thing too.
Yeah, so like it just depends on what is actually happening, and if there's, you know, what the circumstances are. But I mean, it's all crapshoot anyway. So let's try it out. Let's see what happens. I don't know.
It's just such a mess too. Like when you talk about the finances, like I remember having to get rid of the name, and it still once in a blue moon crops up, and I'm like, dude, and my last name's Smith. I mean, come on, that sucks. And I always say that part of the reason I got married was, one, to say I did it in life. Because I wanted to get it over with.
Check it off.
It didn't. Listen, it lasted 6 months, and I was out. Like this is so not me. But then it's like, you know, I arrive at the court with a bag of stuff, going, here, get rid of it. But the name just keeps coming back, and it's like, dude. I mean, at first I wanted the name, just because it would be different than Smith, because Smith sucks. It's boring, And then I'm like, oh boy, this is not what I wanted. This is so, and then there's all this weird stuff that you just can never 100% shake that. And it's like, and then there is the guessing games. You start going through stuff in your head, and you talk about going to see a therapist, and then also, of course, friends, the support network of friends. But sometimes you just want to go home and take a baseball bat to things.
Yeah.
I mean, I wine.
Think, there's whatever order you need to do that in. I do think there's something to be said for embracing all of that. Like there are days one of my friends recommended that I start boxing. There's a home boxing thing where you have like a little punching bag. And I started boxing because I was looking for something. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't
get the energy out. Yeah.
And I needed something. I'm not a big worker outer. Like I don't do it consistently. It bores me. Like I can't be in my head that much. So, but boxing, I just got to beat the crap out of something. And it was such a good workout too. But my therapist said it's actually, there's something in the bilateral movement that there's something that it helps your brain sort of rewire. They do it with like PTSD veterans.
Yeah.
They do therapy on a bike because there's like a bilateral movement thing that's happening with your brain. And she's like, it's really healthy, the bilateral movement. And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, that's great. I also think I would just really like hitting the crap out of this thing. Like you get there's this rage that just simmering inside of you. And especially when there's kids involved with like these children that I was so hyper vigilant about for so long, having to have them gone from me 50% of the time, not knowing what's happening. And they're perfectly well taken care of. But when you're hyper vigilant and your children are not within arm's reach, it's very crazy.
But the balance of raising kids, because you talk about the Disney dad or Disneyland dad syndrome and all of that, about how to balance and then like both be parents and not one going and being the disciplined person. And it can't be good cop, bad cop, but it is in a lot of times, that's a reality.
Yeah, that's a reality, that there are definitely some people that are, their house is going to be the fun one. And in my case, we both tried to do that. We both were like just on in the months following the divorce, because we were just like dancing for these kids, taking them here and there and doing this and that and planning. And my kids are like the chillest children on the world. They're in the world. They just like, they never have two people been better equipped for COVID. They're like, we got to stay home for 6 months. Cool. We're in. Like, we're in pajamas for 6 months. We're cool with that. So both of us are taking them in like all these trips and during summer and then going all these places. And my son's like, when can we stop going so many places? Like, I want to be home. And I was like, yeah, I think part of it, I was covering up my own sadness by just moving. And now that's all settled. And like the kids just want to be with us, especially because they miss being with us all the time too. So like when we're together, now I just focus more on like just chilling and making sure that we're present and we're having fun and whatever. But a lot of our stuff's just us chilling. But yeah, you
still have to do homework. Yeah. You kind of have to be at home, and you have 2 homes instead of 1, really.
Yeah. And there are always different rules at each house, and that's going to be hard for them. And again, I'm super lucky because I'm co-parenting with someone that is a good parent and is always
nice.
Yeah. That's not always the case. There's a lot of times people the co-parent's house is like 0 rules, 0 structure, 0 homework. And then they come to your house and they have to do all this stuff. And they like, oh, this
you're the bad
sucks.
cop. Yeah.
Yeah.
That horrible.
Yeah. That's not a fun thing to do.
You have to have that good balance and also want your kids to grow and do things, find their passions and everything. It's hard. Hats off to all parents. I don't do that side of things, but I respect it immensely. And it's very, I can tell, I know from my mom, if I give her any kind of lip, even Nancy to this day, I mean, in that middle-age zone, and she'll look at me like, you don't have a clue, until you're a parent and know what it's like. And because you are suddenly a single parent, even though you're not a single parent, it's like a weird thing, but I think, for you to write this, I know it's out, and I think it's interesting. We're going to air this the day before Valentine's Day.
Perfect.
Because apparently that's how we roll here. We're sick and twisted, but the reality is holidays are also, like, especially at the beginning, really not. Holidays put everybody on edge. And if you're dating for the first time, it's like, what do? You know what I mean? I told you before we went on air that, I have a tendency to break up with people on holidays. It's just a weird thing that just always happened. Like maybe I just didn't want to go do the family thing. I don't know what it is. I'm just like,
you
I'm
didn't
not
want to buy the
interested.
present. You're like,
No,
I don't have
I'm
the
good at
budget for
that.
this.
I'm good at that because I always think about people and what they like. I'm not, that wasn't, I think it's just the drama that goes with it. It's like, can't we just go have a glass of wine and get on with it? Like, I think there's this family pressure. Maybe it was just the people I was dating, but somehow,
I think that holidays inspire reflection and introspection. It is a lot. I remember when we were together, there was one it was Christmas, and it was like the December or whatever. And I remember making a mental note that if it's still like this next year, I'm leaving. Like they become these sort of like benchmarks, and it just makes you, it's a time for reflection. And especially Valentine's, if the person, I don't know, doesn't do what you want, or maybe you just realize, I don't actually want to be spending this day of love with this person. Holidays just have a way of kind of enlightening you or waking you, or maybe shaking you awake from whatever sort of lull you've been in with, I don't know. But yeah, good times.
Yeah, they
Buy
do.
the book.
Yeah, really. This is the time. But you're really right about those mental notes, because it's kind of like you're talking to yourself, and they do come back. You do have those memories that come back, and those little benchmarks that you're saying that go, yeah, did we really need to do that? And is this phony? Is it not? Yeah, but don't hang yourself up on these holidays either, because they're just little traditions that if you read the history of half of them,
yeah.
When you read the history of half of the holidays, it's pretty brutal. Some of them are really cool, but some of them, Halloween wins to being the best holiday. But
with kids, it's always interesting because you're explaining things to them, and they ask questions like, what is Easter about? You're like, well, okay, so it's something to do with Jesus, but I don't really know what the bunny is doing and why he's so big. And they're just like, none of this stuff makes sense. I'm like, I know, don't overthink it. Like,
Jesus was eating chocolate eggs that came out of a bunny,
I guess, right? It's and I said, really, it's all about commercialization. Everything that started probably as something pure is just now become, how do we make money? Like, and how do we extend this for 35 days of Halloween?
But don't you think women internalize these things too? Like, if I didn't get something for Valentine's Day or whatever, this becomes a big deal. Like, we've got to realize what's real and important in life, and understand that difference between what the commercialization is, what's happening with commercials, with, retail, with this whole, absolutely go buy gifts, and please do it with a small business. But honestly, there's something with that where it's affecting our emotions because of our own expectations, and it's a BS setup, quite frankly.
Yeah, and it's not even our expectations. It's something that we have been told to expect. I always tell the kids, like, Christmas is my least favorite time to give people gifts, because it's the one time a year that you can hand someone a gift and they feel bad because they didn't get you something. Like, I love seeing something out when I'm shopping, reminds me of a friend, and like give it to them, like out for lunch. And like, I saw this and reminded me of you, and like, oh my gosh, that's so sweet. But if you do that during Christmas time, if you're like, hey, I saw this and I thought of you, and they'd be like, oh, I didn't get you anything. I'm like, it doesn't matter if you got me anything. I got you a present. It doesn't matter. Yeah. And it's like this competition thing. And it's like, that's not what presents should be. It should be, I saw something, I thought of you. Here's a gift for you.
Yeah,
not
exactly.
because oh crap. There's a date on the calendar that says I have to get you a present. I'm always telling them that too. Like, you don't just go get someone a present. Figure out what they like, what they're interested in, and buy them something simple. If it's something simple that they actually connects to, like, them and their personality, it'll be worth so much more than something elaborate that's like pointless,
So don't stress if you're breaking up over Valentine's.
Yeah, just go
get the book. Exactly. I think even, whether or not someone has, done the paperwork for marriage, that they should read your book. I think it's a relationship book too, because there's so many people who didn't do, the sign thing. And by this time, this country, they don't do that, do they? Where it's like common law marriage, like after.
I think after Canada does 7 or 10 years, maybe 7 is common law. Yeah, that's still a thing. Yeah, I don't think that a marriage certificate defines a commitment to somebody, right? I've found that real estate and children are what really bind you together when you're trying to split up.
Real estate
so
and
much-
maybe your business. Yeah, right.
Yeah, any sort of financial entanglements and children are really going to be a lot more trouble to get out of than a marriage license. I'll tell you that right now. So yeah, I mean, commitment, and anytime you're in a relationship with somebody and it doesn't work out, it hits hard, and it's a rebuilding of a life. You know what it is? It's a rebuilding of a future. You had a future in mind for yourself that was sort of set out, and then you change that. It's gone. That future is gone. And that's really exciting when you think about it, because you get to rebuild and like redefine what you're going to do. But it's terrifying because you're like, oh crap, I thought I like had it figured out. And now I'm 40 something and I'm having to rebuild all this stuff. And like, yeah.
Oh, it's cool though, in a way, like you're saying, it's a blank canvas. And I think at this point, like we all learn, like, have your own bank account, like just have your own bank account.
Definitely.
That's something, I think my mom, drummed into my head. Always have your own bank account. Always have your own stash. That's because no matter what.
That's the worst. And a lot of women get in that situation where they are stuck financially. I cannot leave. What am I going to do financially if I leave? And that's a really suffocating place to be.
And I think about my grandma's era when her husband, my grandfather, died. She didn't even know how to balance a checkbook. She'd never written a check. She didn't, he was the dominant.
Yeah.
Like you're get back in the kitchen and have another baby person, so
have a baby in the kitchen while you're making dinner. This is your job.
Do it all at the same time.
Yeah.
Hopefully the baby won't be in the food. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, Dawn Dais, am I pronouncing your last name correctly? Because I always give everyone new names.
Dais. Yeah.
Dais. Okay.
You got really close. Yeah.
Dawn Dais, it's DAIS.com. And again, the book is called the SHIT, the stuff no one tells you about divorce. And she's got a whole bunch of other books. So find her on Amazon, find her on her website, social media, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and best wishes as you fill that blank canvas with new things.
Yes, and have a good Valentine's Day.
Oh,
Don't break up with anyone.
Anyone to break up with.
I will find someone and then break up with them and by Valentine's.
Real quick. I'll do it. We're on the road. I'll just go down the street and pick somebody out. Say,
make it a goal. Set goals. It's important to have goals.
Thanks so much.
Bye.